Hello, and welcome to a Season 1 episode of Beyond Teaching, a new series featured on the PsychSessions network. This series is hosted by Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University, Adelinka Akinsler-Smith from City College of New York, City University of New York, Asani Sewell from Pacific University, and yours truly, Eric Landrum from Boise State University. Through informal discussions and email exchanges, what we discovered and agreed upon is that to be a successful academic or professional, it takes more than teaching, research, or clinical skills. That is, today's psychology professionals were not taught everything they need to know in graduate school. How do you find a mentor in your career path? And what do you do if that mentoring relationship turns sour? What are the strategies for dealing with Zoom fatigue, both for you and your students? How do you learn to say no, whether that is for a job offer, a student's letter of recommendation request, or a potential committee assignment? How do you choose what journal to submit your work to, and how do you deal with cranky reviewers? These topics and more are discussed in the Season 1 episodes that are now being released spring and summer of 2021. In future seasons, we'll be inviting guest experts to join us, and we have a host of topics to discuss regarding areas of our jobs that no one ever prepared us for. Now, I don't mean that to sound cranky or anything, but there really is a lot that no one ever told us, right? And so that's what this podcast is all about, taking us beyond teaching.
Welcome to Beyond Teaching, and I am really not a part of this project. This is Garth Neufeld from PsychSessions, but I have been invited, and I am so happy to be here today to be a part of episode 1 of this new project, which, as I understand it, came out of a conversation between Eric Landrum and Susan Nolan, and now we're a big family. So today, in episode 1, we hope to introduce everyone and tell you a little bit about what this series is going to be all about. And so I think I'd like to toss over to Susan Nolan, who has been a guest on this podcast once, twice. I don't know how many. Twice, yeah.
Twice. 2.5.
2.5 times. And Susan, you're at Seton Hall University. If anybody doesn't know Susan, it is right now it's 2021, and it is her presidential year as STP president, APA Division II. So you're very busy. Thanks for taking the time to do this, for following your creative impulse to see what podcasting would look like on this really important topic. As we get into that topic, let me just ask you maybe to talk about the initial conversation that you and Eric had and how we got here.
Hey, Garth, before we do that, Eric breaking in to be rude and obnoxious, can we go around the horn and hear from everybody and get the characters and their voices connected to their name?
Absolutely. So let's start here. Eric Landrum, Boise State University.
This is like my basketball introduction. Eric Landrum, Boise State University.
I'm so glad you're on this with me right now and breaking in. It just seems makes things seem really normal. Hey, I want to introduce, now help me out here. If I get this wrong, I want to know, all right? So Asani Sewell is with us from Pacific University. And where's Pacific University, Asani?
Pacific University in Oregon. There's another Pacific University, I think maybe in California, but we are the Oregon variety. So glad to be here.
A lot of Pacific things going on the West Coast.
Yes, that's right. Always bowing down to that great ocean we have there.
All right. And Yinka Akinshulure. How did I do?
Did okay. You forgot the easiest part, the Smith part. Akinshulure Smith.
You know, I was so nervous about the initial part that I forgot the Smith part. Hey, can you tell us a little bit, where are you at? Where do you work at? And where do you live?
I am at the City College of New York and the Graduate Center. I am also at the Bellevue Program for Survivors of Torture in New York City.
And I'm sure we're going to get into some of that, where you all work at, what your passions are. And then let's circle back here. Susan Nolan, welcome back. And you're at Seton Hall University in the great state of New Jersey.
Yes, thanks, Garth. I am super excited to start this project. And as you said, Garth, this came out of a conversation with Eric. And I was talking about the fact that when I was new in the field in graduate school, actually, I had so little knowledge of all the side things you're supposed to know, not just doing your research in your classes, but what's a CV? Why is that different from a resume? Is peer review? What is the difference between an adjunct and an associate and an assistant professor? Just all sort of the basics of academia. And with some classmates who similarly were not from an academic background, we were talking about all this with some of our professors. And Doug Medine, who was chair of the department at Northwestern University at the time, heard our questions and was awesome in creating a class, a special topics class for credit, where we spent the whole semester week after week doing different things. Let's all peer review. Let's all write a mini grant proposal. Let's do a CV. Let's do a teaching philosophy. And over the course of the semester, I suddenly started to feel like I really was a part of this. And I think that because Doug's course doesn't exist for everybody, and because we all need variations of it every point in our career, there's still things I need for that, like social media, hello, Twitter. I really wanted to find a way to have a venue for that. So I started talking with Eric, and then Yinka and Asani were the first people to come to mind for me. And I'm so thrilled that they accepted, because I think you'll see that among the four of us, we come from very different research backgrounds, very different teaching, universities, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of different things in the room, including clinical work. So I'm just really excited for us to start to have conversations.
Eric, you have a knack for, in conversation with people, for picking up on interests and joining. I've been on the other side of the conversation with you a lot of times where I'm sharing something and then you're like, that's a thing. What you're talking about right now is a thing. Can you talk about that with your conversation with Susan?
There's a number of things about Susan and the kernel of this idea. First off, how cool is it that a graduate school professor picks up on concerns and questions that grad students are having, and rather than blowing it off and going back to his laboratory and writing the next grant, he might have gone back to his laboratory, written the next grant, but then invented a class that met a need that graduate students had. And there's a role model for graduate instructors around the country, which obviously inspired Susan and stuck with her, which then inspired the rest of us who are involved with this project. And I think that's one piece of it. Another piece of it is that people can't see this, obviously, but I'm smiling. Susan has what I would label or diagnose, and this is dangerous, right, as infectious spirit. Meaning when she gets an idea and she's excited about it, she will positively infect others who may be overwhelmed and not have the time, but it's such a cool idea. And the opportunity to work with her, there are stories about how the Red Sea parted. For me, my calendar parts and time becomes available to work with Susan Nolan. And then a chance to work with Yinka and Asani has just been a blessing already. Although we're talking to you in episode 1, here's a peek behind the curtain. We've already recorded episodes 2 and 3. So we have a preview of how this goes, and it's been going delightfully.
Yeah. Yinka, what is it about this project that connected with you? Obviously, we don't know exactly where this whole thing is going. We do have somewhat an idea, but we do make it up as we go along. But initially, why'd you say yes?
Of course, as Eric just pointed out, when Susan calls, you answer. And I answered. But I think one of the reasons, unlike, I'm assuming, I think the three of you, the piece that I bring in is I was an international student. I've been an international student in many places, but in the US as a graduate student, navigating all these things creates an extra layer. And it is coming from that perspective too. I actually, it suddenly dawned on me after we had our first 2 sessions that, wait a minute, there's another piece. What about international students trying to navigate education in America? And there are quite a few barriers, not even getting into finances, that come into play, and information that we don't always have access to. So yeah.
Yeah, that will be an important episode. I've seen the episode list or the ideas list, and I'm excited for these. I'm excited to hear about what we weren't told about international students or about education abroad. I'm excited when I read down the list because so many of the topics that you guys are going to be looking into are ones that, in my experience as a first-gen college student that I share this with you. Nobody told me about these things. It put me at a disadvantage. It was a little embarrassing early in my career to not know some of these sorts of things. Asani, what is it about this project that excites you, or why do you say yes?
Susan's right at the heart of it, just like folks have been saying, my colleagues have been saying. So Susan was my undergraduate mentor at Seton Hall University some years ago. And so she always holds a very special place in my heart. And I knew I wanted to be a professor before I met Susan in my senior year, but that really solidified it for me. And so then I was on this crazy adventure to go off and get my doctorate degree in psychology. Wonderful. After I graduated, I landed a teaching fellowship at Grinnell College in Iowa and began my work as a professor in my first year, and was astonished to find out how much of that work I knew nothing about, despite having been in graduate school for 5-6 years. And so I had to just figure out along the way. I had some mentors here and there, but there's so much, I think, of this work, as my colleagues have been saying, that is hidden, that you don't get a lot of details about, and you have to figure out as you've gone along. So I've certainly learned some things along the way that I want to share with folks. And the other piece that I feel like I've navigated fairly well is being a Black queer woman in predominantly white institutions and all that goes along with that. And there's some navigation negotiations along that as well that I've had to make too and learn as I've gone along. So I'm super excited. I'm still, for the most part, as delighted about being a professor as I was when I was in my sophomore, junior, thinking about being a professor. So that's there. I didn't mention my intro that I also do some clinical work and supervision also at one of our local hospitals. So I'm doing that balance, I believe, like Yinka is, about doing clinical services, supervision, and also all the other parts of being an academic professor. So that's there too for me. And I'm looking forward to talking about it.
It's interesting to hear that you're out doing the work. So you have one foot in practice and then one foot in academia. I think it's going to be a really cool perspective for this conversation and this series that you all are doing. And by the way, just hearing snippets of those of you who are new to Psych Sessions here, hearing snippets of your stories, I cannot wait to get you on a full episode of our flagship Psych Sessions, because I'd love to take a deep dive with you into your backstory and just hear where you came from and what you're passionate about. I'm sure that'll come out through here, but yeah,
that
and I know our
Garth's,
audience will love it.
Clever way of inviting you both to do your own episode.
Yeah, this whole thing's just a foot in the door, isn't it?
Foot in the door, door in the face. I always get
podcast.
Those social psych chapter topics confused.
Yes. So Asani, your relationship with Susan is that she was a professor and mentor of yours. Mm-hmm. And Yinka and Susan, how did you all meet?
We met when we were both doing work at the United Nations. I was part of the American Psychological Association team, and I was spending my Thursdays there for 5 years. And one of the coolest parts of doing that was the ability to see amazing talks when speakers came in. And Yinka was one of those amazing speakers. And so I fangirled her. And
then I reached right back out to you, and she came and taught a class in one of my courses at City College.
And I've long wanted to do something working with Yinka. And I should add with Asani as well, I've followed her career, again, huge fan, watching her meteoric rise, and also have long wanted to do something with her. And I think the voices that you're hearing from them, their personal experiences, but also I think the clinical piece, I really wanted, because in psychology, sure, there are people like me and Eric who are not doing that, but there are plenty of people like Yinka and Asani who are. And I think that balance is important. And I should also add that we're not always all four of us going to be hosting. We might have side conversations. We might bring in guests who are experts in an area. So when, say, Yinka talks about international students or even international faculty members, I can imagine having a guest who also had that experience coming to join her, and maybe also one of the rest of us to have a different perspective. So it's going to be mixed up a little bit.
Can I just add here that I met in our consultations with the World Bank, and then we saw each other again at the World Health Organization at the international conference.
I remember that. Yes, that's right.
Sonny, I can't remember. Were you the opening keynote and I was the closing keynote? I can't remember.
I think that's how it was.
I think that's true. And then I was just really surprised to hear that you were Susan's student, but then I wasn't surprised when I thought about it. I did turn down that United Nations gig when it conflicted with the WHO and the World Bank.
Of course, what Eric is doing here is making light of the fact that his co-hosts here have done so much great work in their careers, impressive work, and I hope that we'll get into all of that. And I could see everybody's laughing pretty hard.
And Eric Eric, too, of course, your background within the teaching of psychology world is,
Yeah,
You're-
I get
you're-
invited all the time to give talks in Boise and outer Cuna and sometimes Nampa Caldwell.
and
or,
sometimes the National
suburbs.
Institute of the Teaching of Psychology, and sometimes ICPS in Paris. So stop.
I'm just kidding. When I heard about United Nations, my jaw drops because that's pretty damn impressive. Let's just stop right there. That is both admiration and a wee bit of jealousy. And
It's
envy.
volunteer work. You could, yeah.
They still got to vet you and let you in the building. Come on.
Hey, I have a question.
We can cut this part out, by the way.
Yeah.
Not at all. No, this is who we've got in the room. I love it. So I want to know who should be listening to this. Who is this going to help? And I think I have my idea of who these conversations will be helpful for. And by the way, folks, I think what we're going to do is make sure that we clearly label these as these talks come out, as each episode comes out, so that you can quickly navigate them so that they're helpful. But does anybody want to talk to the audience? Like, who should listen?
I think one of the groups of people who would benefit from listening to us are those middle career folks. And I identify with those folks very highly because I am in the middle of my career. It's a time where you're looking forward and also looking back, where you're trying to, at least for me, find a renewed sense of passion and to figure out what's going to be the next chapters in my profession, what's next for me. So I think that the sense that this will help folks get back to basics in a way, get back to the joy, but also to find new avenues of thinking and doing the work that I think will be really helpful. So those mid-career folks, and I'll add too that we know that there is a mid-career slump that happens. It's been talked about in the research and so forth. I think I've certainly felt it. I'm going on sabbatical also. Can I just say that? I have senioritis super bad. After this semester, I'm on sabbatical for 8 months. So that'll be an opportunity for me to not only do my research, but also to rejuvenate and think about, okay, what comes next? For me, hosting this podcast will be helpful in that regard, and listening to the episodes coming out will also be helpful in that regard as well. So
I'd add, just going backwards, even to undergrads who are looking to see what does psychology have to offer. One of the things I often say to people is one of the many things I love about being a psychologist is that there's so many ways to be a psychologist. You can be a clinician, you can be a researcher, you can be a professor, you can work in a clinical setting, you can work in private practice, you can work in an organizational setting. So one of the many things I'm hoping will accomplish is just showing the depth and the breadth of what we can do in this field to people who are just peeking in and wondering, what can I do? Where can I go? What does this hold for me?
Eric, this must be music to your ears right now.
Let Susan go and then I'll go.
I was just going to say that, and going on from what Yinka was saying, that I think this is useful for anyone at any level who's doing advising, because we all know our own experiences and perhaps those of the people that we talk to the most. But hopefully this will give people a lot of different perspectives, so that when you're advising your students, and whether or not undergrads or grads, or advising junior faculty members, if you're mid-career or senior, or advising your peers who are maybe, like Yinka said, looking to mix it up.
Yeah, I haven't thought too much about it because I really don't know. We've all generated a topic list, and it's hard to know where it's going to go exactly, which is really a kind of exciting thing. But I think there's going to be two emergent themes. And one is going to be, how can we help people get better at the parts of the job that no one's ever trained for? So how can we help them get better at serving on committees, or writing letters of recommendation, or navigating the mythical work-life balance? All these things that we all do, probably none of it we put on a CV, or very little. And how can we get better at that? And so we'll tap into our contacts around the nation, actually around the world, and bring them on or talk amongst ourselves. And so I'm excited about that. But I think the second thing is, if you want to do something different in your career, but you don't know how, we're going to be a place to come for that. So if you want to know, if I want to write an edited book, how do I go out and find editors? If I want to start a conference, who would I talk to about that? Who might we have on as a guest who's started a conference in their career? Garth Neufeld has. We've got him right here. Who, if you wanted to start a blog, or if you wanted to write a book and have it published by APA Books, we might have Linda McCarter on, acquisitions editor for APA Books, and have her talk about that process. So for me, I think getting better at the covert curriculum, so to speak, of academics' job, but also if you want to break out of the doldrums of your job and do something new and exciting that you don't know how to do, I think we're going to be talking about those things as well.
I want to just ask one more question before we wrap up this first episode. And that is, if there was one thing, not to put you all on the spot, but if maybe I'll just go around the circle. If there is one thing that you wish you would have known, that would have been really helpful. There's probably many things, but if there's one thing that you wish you would have known coming into a career in academia specifically, what would that be? Susan, why don't we start with you?
So I think the number one thing I wish I had known early on is all the ways in which you can be involved with professional organizations in psychology. I have found my home in a number of them, including the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. And I wish I had been involved in professional organizations from my very first year. And I just didn't even know how. In fact, Eric Landrum is the reason that I finally got involved, because I met him and said, how do I get involved in SDP? And yeah, wish I had known that from the start.
I would say how to say no, all the different ways of saying no. When you're first starting off in your career and you're a talented individual, like we all are here today, and our listeners are, you get asked to do a lot of things. And it can be hard to suss out which opportunities should I take, which ones should I let go of, which committees should I be on, which ones not to. And I think I was someone who said yes an awful lot early in my career and frequently felt overwhelmed and like I was divided in so many ways. So being able to say no and all the creative ways that one can say no, I think is something I wish I would have known. And now I have a whole sheet I can share it with not the people listening, but my host, 50 ways of saying no that I've developed over the years, from the no thanks yous to this is a season of no for me right now. So some of them are tongue in cheek, but yeah, I think saying no.
You got to share that.
It's an episode.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's pure gold.
Absolutely.
There's got to be a riff on
that.
50 ways to leave your lover, 50 ways to leave your calendar open.
Oh man.
Right. Yes.
Yinka, what is a thing that you wish you would have known?
I wish I would have known coming into academia, the amount of work, I didn't understand the three-legged stool. I didn't know that I would have to hit each one in the way I had to hit it, and the amount of work it would entail. Getting through the dissertation, getting through graduate school, getting through internship, was okay, behind me. And then I did some other things for a while. And then when I slipped into academia, finding out, wait, it's not just going in and teaching. I have to pull together a syllabus and stand in front of these people. And if I want to advance, I have to do blah, 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 blah. That was a surprise, a big surprise.
Yeah, it seems important that we might get that information ahead of time. Eric, what was it for you? Because I know that you've talked a lot about your passion for this area for students, but what was it for you?
Garth, I'm thinking about this and I have a hard time limiting it to one thing. There is an epic amount of things I wish I would have known, or I wish I would have done differently. I think I could launch my own 100 episode podcast on the top 100 things I should have done differently, reflecting back on my career. I'm having a hard time with limiting it to one. To give you an answer, I guess I'll just say I can think of times when I should have been kinder and gentler with the people around me, both with students and with colleagues and with family members.
Can I just add to that, Eric? But
Sure.
Kind and gentler to others, but I'm thinking more kind. This is the selfish piece. I wish, looking back on it, I had been kinder and gentler to myself.
I wish I'd been kinder and gentler too, Yinka. I absolutely agree with you. I regret.
I do hear this self-care thread coming through.
I know.
In actually a number of answers. And I know, Eric, that you would agree with that as well. And maybe we can't take good care of our careers and our families and our students if we're not taking good care of ourselves. So maybe that'll be a theme, a thread that runs through this. Yeah. I am so grateful that you invited me to come in and be a part of episode 1. I can't wait to see what this turns into. I've seen the list. I've seen the people that you are eyeing to invite in, the experts on these areas that you're going to have conversations about. And I really think this is going to be one of those series for Psych Sessions that really connects with people, not from just an entertainment perspective, which it will be. I think it'll be fun to listen to, but also will actually offer help. And that, as we've all just voiced here, that's what there were times where we didn't get that and we didn't know we needed it. But hopefully this will be like a breath of fresh air for people. I think we'll leave it there. Thanks for doing this. This is Psych Sessions Beyond Teaching, episode 1. You remember what you guys talked about?
Well, in one, we talked about mentoring and how to find a mentor. And in the other,
We
Zoom
talked
fatigue.
Yeah. How ironic.
Zoom,
Zoom fatigue.
Oh my God. which adds to your cognitive load, so you can't remember things, like recording an episode on Zoom fatigue. And you are welcome to use that. You don't have to edit that out.
Don't worry. I would
Thank
never.
you, Garth.
Thank you all for your time
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Beyond Teaching. I'm Eric Landrum, and I'm going to let my co-hosts introduce themselves.
Susan Nolan.
I'm Yinka Kinchler-Smith.
Sonny C.
And we have a special guest today with today's episode. We have Garth Neufeld from Cascadia College. Hi, Garth.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all again.
Welcome, Garth.
And
Hi.
we have invited Garth to join us today because there are often times that faculty members think about hosting a conference or starting a conference, whether it might be, it could be a campus-based event, statewide, regional, even perhaps sometimes national. And we know that Garth has the expertise to pull this off. He is the founder of TIP Northwest, Teaching Introductory Psychology Northwest. And so, Garth, if you wouldn't mind starting us off and telling us a little bit about the origin story of why in the world did you think you needed to start a conference, and then how that all came about?
Yeah, I think it's complex. I think that, first of all, I realized attending conferences, and I think we've all been a part of these professional groups where we've found some amount of home or identity or some support or something like that. And it's been really important to us. Pretty early in my career, I saw that this was, these were my people, and I'd gotten so much out of it. And there used to be a teaching psychology conference in the Pacific Northwest. So I had attended it a couple times, but they passed that off to different people to organize, and it just got dropped over time. I'm trying to make this succinct, but I had also been at Psych 1 at Stanford, and I had seen that there was a real desire for intro psych specific programming. Now we know, after doing a survey last year through the Intro Psych Initiative, that mostly people don't have any training that is intro psych specific. And they're teaching the classes, and some of our least prepared instructors are teaching the most sections of intro psych. And that's part of the reason there was an audience for it. So there's demand for it. I was fairly certain that it could be successful. And then there was a history that I could lean into. I also had great mentors at Highline College, people who were supporting me. Highline College gave us the space to do it and has ever since, which is fantastic. There are great grants out there that really helped us along to get started, which was wonderful. But then there was this other piece, and I guess this is the more ambitious or selfish or whatever piece, which is I didn't have tenure, and I needed some way to set myself apart. I was applying for full-time jobs, and I was not getting called back for them. And so I needed a way to invest in the teaching of psychology community, and I needed to learn some skills and make some connections, honestly. And it's funny, when I started doing that, other doors started opening for me. I started making different decisions, and eventually my CV started floating to the top of those interview piles, and I started getting calls, and I was a finalist a couple times, and then finally landed a tenure track position. So those are, I fumbled my way through that, but that's the backstory of Tip Northwest.
Could I ask you, Garth, what would be your top 3 things that you think people should think about if they are trying to start a conference?
Yeah, funding, I think, is the first one. You just can't and that can come from grants, and that can come from the people who are going to attend. And very related to that, I would say the second one off the top of my head, is there an audience for what you're doing? So will people show up? I think a second question is, will people pay for it? And then the third thing, which I didn't do, which I would do now, is, are there people that share your passion for this that you can create a committee with? I started doing it for the first 4 years or so. I just did it on my own. And I wouldn't recommend that. Sometimes it's worked out for me. So I would say find a group of people who can ease the burden for you a little bit and share the burden.
I was going to ask you that question, Garth. You led right into it about, you've been using the words we and us an awful lot as you've been talking about your experiences with the conference. And what other collaborations have you forged along the way that have made this possible? The committee you just mentioned, but are there any other kinds of people or types of people that one should think about collaborating with when you're doing this sort of work?
Yeah, if I had to be honest, I think I looked at what Bridget Martin Hard had built over at Psych One, and I thought, there's a big enough audience that I can take this idea without completely feeling like I'm stealing from her. And then she moved to the East Coast, which made things a little more comfortable, I think, for me, because she was doing such a great job. So I was looking at these mentors and models of people who were doing it successfully and really trying to understand what they were doing. So folks like her, but also the generosity of the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. I think, Eric and Susan, did I bring you out the same year? No, different years. Okay, different years. But here are these people who I didn't know at all. Regan Gurung and Eric Landrum and Susan Nolan and Jane Hallen and so many other people who just said yes. When I invited them out, they came. And no one knew Garth Neufeld. I was just somebody who started a conference up, and they did that. So I guess, like, getting myself into these teaching of psychology communities where people are passionate about the cause, it was easier to reach out and invite them to be a part of it.
It was for undergrad intro psychology, but I'm wondering about ways of possibly bringing students into it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think this is, I'm going to talk like I know what I'm talking about. So I'd say that being at a community college, we have our students for such a short period of time. And I've got to say, I'm not in the Psi Beta world. And I'm sure that somebody who had a good, and for those of you who don't know, Psi Beta is the community college sort of version of Psi-Chi. Those are really student-focused organizations. And because I'm not in Psi Beta, here's my uninformed opinion, which is students move so quickly through the community college system, and it's usually a commuter kind of campus, and they are not involved on campus in activities generally. I think it's very challenging to get, and by the way, I agree with you. I think it's really important to get those students activated and learning. The reason I haven't done it yet is I think it's going to be challenging. So when you think about one of those big 3 things, audience, I'm not sure that there is the audience, but now I'm thinking we pull from a lot of 4-year institutions actually for Tip Northwest. Last year, before we were canceled by the pandemic, I think we were close to 90 attendees, and we're a regional conference, and that has grown every year. Maybe I could ask back to you, how do you think a conference like this, even an intro-psych conference, could help students? If I could just mine you for I'm
just thinking of our setting where intro to psych is one of the largest classes. It's not one I teach, but I know other colleagues do. And I'm just thinking about students who have gone on, who might be interested in graduate school down the line, coming on as a TA, shadowing, learning how to, the skill of teaching might be an opportunity for them.
I am now having all these thoughts, like, what if the folks who are coming, what if we asked them to send out invitations to their graduate students, to their undergraduate students, if they had anybody in mind. Like, why couldn't they just fully participate in a conference like this? Not maybe as an undergraduate like poster session or something like that, although there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe just as if they see this as a part of their future in their career, they're probably going to teach intro psych if they're going to
Another
work in
form of
academia.
mentoring. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think about the Association for Psychological Sciences conference, where they have the Bring the Family address. And it would be fun to think about having you would call it something different. I mean, bring the students, whatever, but a student-friendly keynote that would be great for everybody. And the Bring the Family addresses at APS are super friendly to everyone, no matter what level you are. And I can see that as a really fun way to have students have something really cool to look forward to if they're going to the more nuts and bolts teaching related sessions too.
I was thinking about, while you were saying that, how much I've gotten out of all faculty meetings when they do something like a student panel. I love hearing from our students. And I think you're right. I think we're onto something where folks who would attend a teaching conference would love to hear what students are thinking about who are planning to maybe do graduate work in psychology someday.
Hey, Garth, I know that when you started at TIP Northwest, I know you well enough to make this presumption that you didn't start it to get something personally out of it. I'm sure you saw a need. You saw that one conference faded away. You saw what Bridget Martin Hard was doing, and you wanted to replicate that for the audience in the Pacific Northwest. But I think as it happened, that you probably did reap some professional benefits that were personal to you. Some good things did happen. You made some connections that might have had payoffs. Are you comfortable talking about those and mentioning those things, that even though you didn't walk into it so that you would get a deal or this or that, it did happen? I think sometimes good things happen that are unexpected and unanticipated. Someone does a lot of hard work and the thing happens, and then you get noticed and 3 more things happen 4 years later.
Yeah. No, Eric, I was just lucky, actually. Okay. Sorry, I had to
some
bait him.
People have trigger words, and that's one of mine. Thank you, Bill.
Oh no, I'm so blessed by what has come from TIP Northwest. It gave me the opportunity to just watch great people, to learn from them. And because I was all of a sudden corresponding nationally with APA, I learned how to write grants, and then just started having these communications with folks. And yeah, the other day I was just reflecting on how in the world did I get picked by somebody with an APA to be a co-chair for the Introductory Psychology Initiative. Like, how did that happen? How did somebody look at me and say, oh, he should be nominated for the American Psychological Association? Oh my gosh, I'm going to forget the name of it. It's in my room here somewhere. Hold on.
There's so many books there. I don't know how you could find it. So how in the world are you going to find the title?
For the listeners, Garth has a virtual bookcase behind him.
I'm going to edit that part out, but
with books on many shelves.
How did I get nominated for a Citizen Psychologist Award through the American Psychological Association? None of that happens without TIP Northwest. Thank you, Linda Wolf. None of these things happen without it. And I was just reflecting on, we talk about imposter syndrome a lot on PsychSessions. I've never really divulged my own, but it's 100% there. I could tell you all the reasons why I shouldn't be in these positions. I've got a master's degree and not a PhD. When I'm in conversations with people like you, there are areas that I just have no idea about in academia, just because my experience is so different, and being at a community college and all these things I can think about as strikes against me. But I've never been made to feel that way. In fact, it's really nice that people actually don't care about that stuff. What they care about is
I want to flip it, Garth, actually, because those are voices we need in the room. In fact, with the committees I've been on, we're often looking for somebody with the community college experience. Community colleges are like the backbone of American education, higher education. And so I would flip it and say that the qualities that you're bringing are actually very much wanted in a lot of rooms.
Thanks for that. And I will think about that, and I do hear it. Yeah, Eric, this has paid off. This paid off in a friendship with you, where I was able to bring an idea, or where we mutually brought an idea about PsychSessions together. And this has given me the green light to try a bunch of things. We do a pre-conference workshop at ACT, the Annual Conference on Teaching, STP's teaching conference. We do a pre-conference workshop now called Top Inc., which I'm so passionate about. It's an incubator for non-traditional ideas in the teaching of psychology. And people just, they give you green lights after a while, after you've done some things. Now, sometimes there's red lights, but yeah.
Can I do an extra ad for STP here? Because STP actually has grants for teaching conferences, especially if you're starting off something new. They're not ginormous grants, but there are a number of grants every year, and we would love to have more people applying for them to try new and innovative things.
Yep. STP offers grants. You should check out the Associations for Psychological Science small grant fund. I think David Myers works with them to do that. There are pockets of money out there to start, and you really don't need that much if you have a little bit of support. And you can start small as a conference organizer. Start with 20 people. There's no shame in that, and then start to build it. And really, I think there's a stick-to-itness about a successful conference of just showing up and doing the work. Last year, we got canceled because of the pandemic. This year, the committee talked about it, and we said, we need to stay in the minds of people. None of us were really excited about doing a virtual conference, but we took those lemons and we made some lemonade. It's happening in April, and we're going to pull off this really engaging, awesome conference. I'm really proud of it, and I didn't think that would happen.
And Garth, just out of curiosity, how much will it cost to attend that conference?
That conference is free to attend. There's a wait list now.
I was going to say, I think it's quote unquote sold out.
It is, but go to www.tipnorthwest.org. And we are still accepting, I think we have some spots available for the opening session where we're going to talk about the new student learning outcomes by APA's Intro Psych initiative. And you'll get to hear a keynote talk by Dr. Bridget Martin,
Awesome.
who we love. So, yeah. So you can sign up there.
Thank you, Garth, for joining us today.
It is my absolute pleasure